back in college, we used to like Google guys, like girlfriends, and like use that to like our advantage, like getting personal with them. You know, sometimes we'll even DM them like from our own personal account and like, you know, get in their head, you know, before the game even started.
13 seasons of professional football can go by in a flash, and I was grateful for every second of it. This game gave me everything, not without taking a few pieces of me along with it. Playing offensive line, it's been one of the most rewarding and fulfilling experiences of my life. Now, thanks to Audible, I look forward to sharing insights and stories with you of our favorite NFL stars, and of course, the fraternity of athletes that protect them. Offensive linemen are eternally bonded, and I am proud to forever be a part of the blocking brotherhood. I'm Ryan Khalil, and this is Block Forever. Welcome back to the show, Block Forever listeners. Excited to have you listening. If you're new here, as always, I'm your faithful host each and every Wednesday. My name's Ryan Khalil. This is a show of nuanced conversations. If you love to hear intricacies of the NFL, then this is the show for you. Quick reminder, we have Thursday Night Football only on Amazon Prime. This week, we're going to watch the Eagles travel to Houston to face the Texans. Excited to see if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles can take care of business on the road. This is a game they should win, but hey, this is the NFL, and as they've been saying since the beginning of the game, on any given Thursday night. On today's episode, I got to speak with one of the all-time best centers to ever do it. I'm talking about 7-time Pro Bowler and recent inductee to the Jets Ring of Honor, Mr. Nick Mangold. Nick and we got to speak about the upward trajectory of the Jets. He also talked about why Brett Favre was right to ignore him, and he had some surprising thoughts on the special treatment Tom Brady's getting in Tampa Bay. These were his thoughts, not mine. But first, JuJu Smith-Schuster. He is no doubt one of the best talkers in the game at the wide receiver position, which is saying a lot. What I love about JuJu is he's incapable of giving BS media trained answers. It's kind of a breath of fresh air. Whatever you ask him, he's going to give you his honest opinion, which is something I respect a lot. All right, enjoy my conversation with the one and only JuJu Smith-Schuster. Yo, looking good, man.
I appreciate it, man. Just trying to get like you.
First off, always nice talking to a fellow Trojan. It's been so awesome, man, to see you back on the field doing your thing. I have a million questions for you. First question, something I probably should know after 13 seasons, but I don't because they all look the same to me. And that is, what's the difference in a ball that Big Ben throws versus Patrick Mahomes?
So I would say this. I would say Big Ben, like his touch passes, like it's pretty good, damn good. Like he's putting it like if you're running
he played a long time.
Yeah. Like, he's played so long that he knows how to like put that touch on it. Like if he was shooting like a 3-pointer, for example, like someone running like an over or cross, and you have a safety over top, a corner outside, a linebacker underneath, and you're throwing it. He's putting that little touch and dropping it in the pocket. Mahomes, bro, he had a crazy pass this past game where he can be on the opposite side of the field and throw a sidearm to get past the defense and for us to get the ball. I mean, they're both good. I mean, Ben with the touch pass, Patrick Mahomes with the darts and just putting on the money in the spot.
When you're running a route and things are moving a million miles an hour, how much can you see of what the quarterback's doing versus just where you think the ball should be in the air? I mean, where do your eyes go right away when you break a route and you're looking for the ball?
One of the first things I look at is, you know, when I'm going to break my route, who's head up to inside of me, who's inside, what coverage it is, and then if I have to like, you know, fill in, you know, a hole, whether it's zone or whether it's man, and then look at the quarterback and see what's going on in the backfield. Because majority of the times, you know, if the pocket gets collapsed, which you may know, QB's rolling out left or right, and depending on what my route is, I got to be able to adjust on breaking in and out. And people don't know, but it happens in seconds, man. The quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket, and then we just got to work on the move.
The longer you play, though, it's kind of a hard thing to explain. Doesn't it feel like the Matrix sometimes where things start to slow down? It feels like a lifetime. It all happens instantly.
And also, too, like another thing that a lot of people don't know is that The process from as soon as the play is called to like you getting to the line, how much is going through your head, your alignment, your assignment, your details, your steps, your depth, what coverage are they playing? You know, what if the quarterback gives you a signal or alerts in a matter of like, you know, those 25 seconds before the ball is snapped. And when the ball is snapped, you running your route, and then mid-route, you also thinking out, okay, he went from zone to man to my side, so it changes your whole route. And you and the quarterback have to be on the same chemistry and same pace. And that's where it gets really in-depth for a lot of people who don't understand like what we go through.
When a pass play breaks down, I always find it funny that there's like a thought process of the offensive linemen are like, you got to get rid of the ball. The quarterback's like, somebody's got to get open. And then the receivers are like, we need protection and you got to get it to me.
Yeah. And I honestly, that's what I would say. Like, this is the most team sport. Yeah. Like, there's no, in basketball, a basketball player can take over a game. A hockey player can take over a game. But if you talk about like a team sport, it takes all 11 men to make the play happen. And that's the beauty of it, because, you know, we all lean on each other to make a play happen.
So now you're in year one with the Chiefs. You played 5 seasons with the Steelers, and now you've played with 2 of the most iconic coaches in the league. In your mind, what's the biggest difference in coaching styles between Coach Tomlin and Andy Reid?
Biggest difference, so Coach Tomlin is a defensive coach, head coach. Great coach. You know, defensive schemes, all that. Andy Reid, offensive coach. Big offensive scheme guy, you know, and that I would say like that's like the biggest difference, that they both master, you know, each side of the ball.
JuJu, I'm always curious about this. Who's a guy on the Chiefs that's not a household name and the fans may not know a ton about, but that you've been really impressed with his skill level?
Honestly, I would say Juan Thornhill.
Yeah.
He's a safety. He flies around, but doesn't really, you know, he's not the raw glamorous guy, but he does his assignment, he does his job, and he gets the job done. And that's what I like about him, man. He just shows up to work and just plays, man.
One question I like to ask guys, and you can answer this any way you want. It could be a mentor, just a guy you really get along with. But looking back, who's your favorite teammate of your career?
I'll probably have to say like my receiver group in Pittsburgh. I spent the last 5 years there, and that group was very, very special. And then also James Conner. I'll put him in that group. It was a fun time, you know, being around those guys. So yeah, that group of people. I can't say one person, but those people.
One former teammate of yours who obviously you have a history with is AB, Antonio Brown. I know you're big on social media. When you see Antonio Brown trending, what's the first thing that goes through your head?
When I see Antonio Brown trending, I'm like, man, like for someone who's been through a lot and, you know, could have been one of the best, you know, one of the best players if he did, you know, if he stayed playing football, playing wide receiver, because he was so good. Like in practice, like it was, you know, everything he did on game day, like you guys saw it for 60 minutes, but for me, like I saw it every single day where he'll come out ball every day, no matter who's, you know, guarding him. And I would say that like every time I see him trending, I'm like, man, like everything he does is just so catchy. Like Call God, Boomin', you know, put that, like his song. So, I mean, good for him, man.
I heard he practiced pretty hard.
One of the most hardest working guys I've ever been around. Besides all the other stuff, when it comes to football, man, he knows what he's doing.
Wide receiver money has obviously exploded with guys like Diggs in Buffalo, and then the guy you replaced, Tyreek, signing that big deal in Miami. But coming off an injury season, you chose to sign a 1-year deal. So I'm curious, as a receiver, what's the biggest key to having a great statistical season? Is it playing with a guy like Mahomes or playing in a great offensive system where you know they're going to throw the ball a ton? In your mind, what's the number one key to putting up great numbers as a receiver?
I would say consistency. And when I say consistency, I mean like just overall, you know, learning the playbook, going to practice every single day. How you practice is how you perform on game day. And, you know, that's just a fact, you know, for me, at least for myself. And, you know, just knowing the game. I think a lot of us, we get caught up in who's the fastest, who's the strongest, where, you know, who's the smartest on the field. And I've learned that, you know, playing here with Trav, like he's such an intelligent player, man. Like he's calling out the defense before the ball is even hiked and telling me like, hey, like we can do this, we can do that, work with me. And that right there kind of just sets the bar for, I think, all players coming into this league is that how smart can you be, you know? Because everyone's fast, everyone's strong, everyone can do those abilities, but it's up here, like how good can you be up there? And I would say I was playing against Luke Kuechly, like this is like my rookie year, and I had like an around, and he called it before the play was even snapped. So I'm running it around, and like he's such a smart player, man. Like he beat me to the line, he got a tackle for loss, but those are the guys that separates from the other guys.
Luke's the best. Obviously, I played with him a long time. He's actually going to be a guest of mine next week, so I'll make sure to tell him you said that. I heard you mention speed and strength and smarts. If you could take any specific skill from a wide receiver, past or present, what would it be?
Oh, for sure, Randy Moss, bro. Speed, but he would throw his hands up at like 5 to 8 yards, and I'm open. I cover 2, like shell coverage, and he would just run out of the field. Yeah, so 100% Randy Moss, man.
Okay, here's another random question. I think I know what you'll say, but let's just say your team was in some kind of desperate situation for whatever reason, and you had to fill in another position. Where would you hurt your team the least?
Oh, we'll be either be tight end or fullback.
Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. I'll be honest with you, man. I've been doing a lot of like blocking, because I'm a more physical player, so I get in the box a lot, man.
That's awesome.
I like to get aggressive, so I would say tight end for sure, or fullback, either one.
Well, I always love hearing a wide receiver talk about his love for blocking. Another random question for you. What would you say is the most annoying position group?
I guess like for myself, like I guess going against like DBs, like defensive backs, because all they do is they're raw guys. You know, they chat a lot. And I just like to work, you know?
Is there somebody that you see a lot that you play against a bunch that's always trying to jaw you and trying to get in your head?
I would say the Bills, you know, their defense, or at least their corners, you know, new corners, young guys and raw guys, you know, just trying to get in my head, but did not let it faze me not once.
So I've never been a big trash talker. I've always been too physically exhausted to engage. And obviously I've heard everything there has ever been said between offense and defensive linemen. But I'm curious, what are some examples of things DBs would say to you throughout the course of a game?
You got beat, you got strapped, you got locked up, like that was weak. And then I usually come back with like, I don't know who you are. like I'm doing my job. I'm gonna beat you every single time. You can't guard me. So yeah.
What about college versus the pros? Who does more trash talking?
I think in college you got more in depth because, you know, we're young, we're so much energy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, back in college, we used to like Google guys, like girlfriends, and like use that to like our advantage, like getting personal with them.
And would it work?
Yeah, it would work. It would work actually. And, you know, sometimes we'll even DM them like from our own personal account and like, you know, get in their head, you know, before the game even started. Just to say that, you know, we're already, you know, in your head before the game. So it works sometimes, so yeah.
I love the thought of you just sitting at your computer on a Friday night, furiously typing away, trying to find dirt on your opponent. Shifting gears a little bit, you obviously played with some great players and great coaches. What would you say is the best piece of advice you ever received that helped you in your career?
A lot of us all heard this, and it may sound cliche, but the next play mentality. That's the biggest one. And, you know, either you have it or you don't, where a play can affect you and it can affect your whole gameplay after that, or you move on. And, you know, I learned that coming into the NFL. In college, I was like a tough one because, you know, for a long time, that would bother me over a long period of time and affect, you know, going into next week's practice where, you know, this year or, you know, being in the NFL, I've learned that like, you know, you make a mistake, next play mentality, come back even better and just keep going after it.
People say that all the time, but it's easier said than done. What's the key for you to fight through those sort of basic human instincts of kind of harping on stuff that happened that you can't control anymore?
Yeah, honestly, I always say that, like, you know, when times get rough in these adversities, I think for me, it's the 10 other guys who are on the field, you know? Like, not every game is going to be perfect. Not every pass, every catch is going to be perfect. But you know that when that opportunity does come to you, and the coach keeps coming back at you, and the quarterback just keeps coming to you because he believes in you, he trusts you, that right there, you know, gets you to overboard that, like, all right, next play mentality. Also, it's kind of like relating back to, like, like a goldfish. A goldfish has short-term memory. So it's like, be a goldfish. You know, next play, let's get it.
All right, last question, and I really, really appreciate the time. I know how busy you guys are in the season, so thanks for hopping on. All right, here we go. What, in your opinion, is the biggest misconception fans have about life in the NFL?
Oh man, they only get to see 60 minutes of the football game, but they don't get to see like behind the scenes of what we do every morning. Like waking up early, 6:30, 6 a.m., getting your body right for the day, and then, the long meetings, installs. It's, that part that people don't get to see behind, closed doors, but they get to see us perform, for 60 minutes.
Well, I appreciate you, brother, man. I love watching you play. I'm rooting for you always, and keep doing your thing.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Ryan, man. Let's go Trojans, baby. Fight on.
You can listen to Block Forever and other sports content on Audible. Audible is the home of storytelling, audiobooks, originals, podcasts, and more. Start listening free at audible.com. So, quick story about my relationship with Nick Mangold. Back in 2019, when I was considering coming out of my very, very brief retirement to sign with the Jets, there was one guy who kept coming into my mind that I needed the blessing of, and that was Mr. Nicholas Mangold. Nick had been retired 3 years, but I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for him and what he means to the Jets organization. I just felt like I needed his blessing. I was gonna call him. I decided not to. I thought there was a 1% chance that he was gonna Ric Flair me and basically not approve, so I didn't. But Nick ended up being incredibly warm and welcoming. Got to spend a ton of time with him, most time I ever spent with him, and share a ton of stories over his amazing barbecue beer can chicken. I always love talking with Nick. Glad I get to share it with you now. Hope you enjoy. Here we are, Nick. Nick Mangold. I always loved watching you play, but I never studied your film because I always felt like I couldn't do the things that you could do. And this was verified when I thought long and hard about all the battles I had with Chris Jenkins when he played for the Panthers, and sort of every technique in the book I had to pull out for my little ass to really get underneath him and leverage him and control him. And I'll never forget watching you on Hard Knocks just absolutely embarrass him. And I'm curious, were there other players like that you watched that you were sort of enamored with and admired from afar, but just couldn't really study or watch because it wasn't similar to your game?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that that goes. I think for everybody when you talk about the offensive line, everyone has their own little skill set, and so for me, when I was coming out and coming into the Jets, Kevin Y, having previously just been there, it's all you heard about was like Kevin, Kevin, Kevin. So it was like, all right, I'm throwing on that film, watching that, and I was like, I can't do what Kevin's doing. I don't have that mobility. Like I just don't. Like I like to believe that I had a little bit of quickness and speed to me, but Kevin was on a whole nother level. And then we had a coach, and I won't name names, but we had a coach who he was showing us film from like the '90s Cowboys, and he's talking about their techniques and how they were doing things. And I remember sitting there and being like, yeah, I'm not pumped full of steroids. Like, there's no way I can pull that off either. So, like it was like, there's nothing we can do. You can keep telling me that if I step this way, it's going to work. And so it's I think that's kind of the big evolution that you have to come into when you get into the NFL. Because everyone does it in college, and, you in college you're in your own little bubble, and, you already have, there's 5 or 6 centers on that team already. And so like you're in a competition with those guys. When you get to the NFL, you start looking around and you're like, hey, listen, I'm trying to find someone to compare myself with. And then all of a sudden you're like, maybe I just need to be my own person, and I don't need to compare myself, and just need to keep getting better in my own right.
Part of my exploration in this is wanting to understand sort of how you build winning culture, how you build consistent winning culture. Where does that come from for you, and where do you think it mostly comes from for most guys in terms of, Is that something that inherently you just figure out on your own? Does it come from mentors outside of a franchise, or is it important that there be sort of older mentors that kind of teach young guys how to do it?
Yeah, no, I think for me personally, it was coming from a college coach. To get to the right mind frame that I needed to be in, he always talked about the game of football is like a roller coaster. You have your highs, you have your lows, you have it within a season, within a game, within a practice, within a play. You have your highs and your lows. He said, if you want to be the best that you can be, make that roller coaster as flat as possible. So don't get up on the highs and don't get down on the lows. Try to find that even keel, and that's where you will find that you can be your best. And so that was kind of what I always held in my mantra. When things are going great, like yes, you get to enjoy it, but you need to also remind yourself, like, hey, listen, we still have a job to do. We still got to get things going. But also when it's down in the dumps and things are not going well, to not just be like, oh no, we can't dig out of this. We're stuck here. Like, this is terrible. Everything's going wrong. Be able to stay that even keel. I was very fortunate to be told that at an early age in college, and kind of took that mantra with me. And then when you're talking about NFL teams in general and that sustained success, it is a combination of veteran guys who are leading the way, who are showing the younger guys kind of how to be an NFL player. And I think you kind of lose that as you have so much turnover, where you get a lot of younger guys in without an older mentor there that's playing along with them. Like, you can bring a guy in and be like, all right, he's our backup right tackle, but he's the old guy and he's going to show the way. He's not showing the way if he's not on the field. Like, that guy has to be on the field. So to be able to find that veteran that's on the field, and just kind of give here's how it's done. And especially on the offensive line, you know as well as anybody else, like, the offensive line is not flashy. It's not sexy. It's a put your head down and go to work. And, I think that kind of gets lost, especially nowadays where, everything gets blown up. Social media is all over the place, and guys' heads are bigger than the door frame before they even walk in the door. They're, now they've made it to the NFL, and they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when in reality, you got to grab your lunch bill. And you need to go to work. You need to be in there in the weight room doing what you're supposed to be doing and doing the little things. And I think that's where that veteran leadership, when you see a guy show up and, he's in year 10 and he's still at 6 a.m. lifting, and he's still there, ready to go for the 8 o'clock team meeting, never late, always doing exactly what he's supposed to do. I think that shows to the younger guys, like, hey, this is how things are done. Like, this is real life experience.
That's an interesting point of view. I agree with you. I also heard somebody make a comment last week about kind of the strangeness of how the NFL season's gone this year. Someone who played a long time saying, I think the lack of off seasons caught up to the league. What are your thoughts on that, just in terms of how little time these coaches get to spend with these guys, especially in a position group like the offensive line? I mean, it doesn't seem like there is enough time to really teach guys the fundamentals, both in how to conduct themselves off the field, but then also on the field as well.
Oh, definitely. And I think, when that all came about, of shortening the offseason and the way the padded practice and everything, and especially as I was getting on the second half of my career, when that came around, I was all for it. It was like, yeah, hey, let's slow down here, get a little time off. But it is so, you can tell, like, it's hurting the league because you don't have that time. Offensive line coaches since the dawn of time have always kept guys going out early, keeping guys late, doing the extra stuff. I remember there was a guy, it was year 7 or 8 for me. And I was playing next to a guy and he didn't know, we were getting back into the off season training, and, you have 4 hours that you can be there. And so you have your lifting, you have your walkthroughs, and then, you're done and everything. And we get done with it, and he had gotten like every question wrong that the coach had presented to him. And this was day one. And, it's simple stuff. And I'm sitting there, I was like, listen, you've been here for a year. Like, how are you getting this wrong? And he's like, well, it's just, I just don't know it. So ended up spending my free time then, being like, all right, why don't you, and when we're done, we're going to come back in the classroom. We're going to, we're teaching this all over again, because the coach doesn't have any time to teach you what you need to know on the basic side. He's got to go to, football 201, football 301. He can't stay at 101.
Right.
And so I did that for an off season, and that's where the younger guys are missing, because they're not getting it from college anymore. I mean, college, we had a guy show up. I think it was my second to last year. Guy showed up, and the coach had asked him, hey, "What's your favorite protection? Like, what protection do you like the most?" And he was like, "Right and left." And the coach was like, "Right and left is not a protection." He goes, "No, you go right or you go left." And I was like, "Well, no, it's not a protection. That's a direction." And so, I think the way that they're dumbing it down in college is also starting, not only the off season and taking away the practices and everything, but the way that the college offenses are dumbing down, I think, is hurting it as well.
I want to talk about the lines that you played on, because you played on some pretty great lines. I always felt like my best seasons were because of the guys around me. You're only as good as the guys you play next to. Can you talk about the lines that you played on and just sort of what you felt like the kind of secret ingredient was to why those lines were so great?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, and you're exactly right. You're only as good as the people around you. And I had my right guard, Brandon Moore, very unheralded player, should have gotten a lot more respect than he did. I played next to him for 7 years. So you play next to a guy for that long, you stop having to make calls. You're able just to, I know what he's doing. He knows what I'm doing. We can do it together. You spend all that time together. So I was very fortunate that way. And then left guard was a little bit more of a rotating cast for me, but I was able to. I had Alan Faneca come in 08, my third year in the league, and that was huge for me. Having a Hall of Famer next to you is obviously makes your job so much easier. Right. And so then from there, left guard for me was more of like my children, where I was, the next one up was Matt Slauson, who, kind of, I was able to mold, but it was nice having a younger guy that could be like, hey, listen, this is how you need to do it. And, here's what we're doing. And then followed up after Slauson was Brian Winters, which was like Slauson 2.0. And so having a hand in him and being able to kind of mold and direct him the way that I wanted to, all the while still having, a pretty solid right guard next to me, was a big help. And so the best offensive line I was ever a part of was obviously the 08 and 09. It was Jabrick Ferguson, Alan Faneca, myself, Brandon Moore, and Damian Woody. And we joke all the time that it was 4 first rounders and a defensive lineman. Because Brandon Moore was a converted defensive lineman, went to NFL Europe back when that was still going on, got switched to guard. And so the 4 first rounders, we'd always pick on him because he was just a defensive lineman that, had his last leg in the NFL. But that we were able to stay together. I think we played 26 straight games. I want to say, don't quote me on that number, but that consistency and being able to overcome, all the injuries and everything, and be able to start 26 games together, you start finding a rhythm and you get in that rhythm, you get going. And that's a huge help.
You also had some great quarterbacks.
Mm.
Favorite quarterback that you have? Is that hard to say? It's like picking a favorite kid, right?
I know that is. It's tough. And, it has to be Sanchez because I do a podcast, The Exchange, with him. So he always reminds me that.
So you're contractually obligated to say that.
Contractually obligated to say Sanchez.
Where's Fitzy? Where's Fitzy fit in that?
Fitzy is 1B. I love Fitz. He's fantastic. I've been really enjoying his time on Thursday Night Football. That's been a lot of fun watching him. He does a great job. And so those are up there. I mean, it was. So you run down the list, and Chad Pennington was a fantastic person to come into the league with. He really he was the nuts and bolts kind of guy that kind of taught me a lot about protections and everything. And then you have the gunslinger and Brett Favre, and so we had him for a year. Then you have Sanchez come in, Geno Smith, Fitz, and then the cast characters behind them. I mean, Kellen Clemens, Patrick Ramsey. Michael Vick. I played with Michael Vick for a year. Kevin O'Connell, now the coach up in Minnesota. He was with us for a little bit. Matt Sims was with us for a little bit. And it's just who else? Bryce Petty. He was with us for a bit. So there's just it's a whole laundry list of names that you can just keep going down.
There's nothing better than having a revolving door of quarterbacks during a given NFL season. It's just such a recipe for success. I remember one time we went through like 4 quarterbacks one season. We were down to a guy who was an undrafted free agent, and we were playing at home against the Bucks. And we had two botched snaps, center QB exchanges. And I remember on the second one, he came to me with these eyes of like, what happened? What did you do? And I just kind of looked at him like, I promise you it's not me. Okay. I promise you in this scenario, in this formula, it's not me. Yeah, and it's just, you take for granted those little things that are just like, even just the kind of getting the snap count and the ball snapped.
The snap count's always a funny one because you're right. Like the cadence of it, the coaches will harp on it all day long. Like, this is how it's done. This is how it's done. And yet every quarterback is different.
It's different. It's like we had one where it was like white 80, set hut. And Cam would always blend the second white 80 and set hut together, but other quarterbacks would say it. So I was like, sometimes I would get like kind of like a false start jerk going, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where you're trying to anticipate the count.
And especially it gets tricky when like you had Cam for so many years. So you get used to, the blending or how they like, because a lot of times like Fitz would always use white 80. Like white 80 was just a blend.
Yeah.
But then, someone would come in as a backup and be like blue 40. Like, what the hell's blue 40? Like, that's not a thing. Like, you're supposed to say white 80. And then like you just get some of them like try to draw it out too much. Like Matt Sims would always he would always try to. I think it was more of like a projection of I don't know, like he's got like a confidence thing. So he would like really draw out his color number and just like, all right, let's get to the point. Like, just let's snap this ball here. We get it. You know what you're doing. Got it.
We know what a great career you had. I want to talk more about some of your bloopers and blunders. What were some kind of like, oh shit moments where, you got to kind of like peacock off the field, like you don't know what happened, but you sort of are like, holy shit, I almost messed that up.
There's definitely one that sticks out to me the most. It was in New England. It was towards the end of my career, so it had to be 15, maybe 16. It was a quick stunt. It was nothing crazy. I've seen 1,000 times. Linebacker is coming around the nose tackle who's slanting away. You pass the guy off and you take on the linebacker. It's no big deal. I mean, you've probably done it a million times. And you do it in your sleep. For some reason, I don't know why, but maybe my cleats got stuck funny. I didn't recognize it fast enough, but I got knocked out. Like, he just came, I forget who it was, came barreling around the nose tackle and just completely laid me out. And luckily the ball got off, so no one really noticed and it wasn't that big of a deal, but there's definitely film of me just getting smoked. And it's like, oh, what do you remember from your career? I'm like, that's the first thing that pops in my head. It's like, don't tell that story. Don't tell that story.
What about like game-changing mistakes? I had one in San Francisco. We needed a first down to basically ice the game and win it. We called a power play to the right. It was like an unbalanced power play, so the tackle was over to the right. So it was me, the guard, and then the tight end was Greg Olsen. In all game, Justin Smith, who is one of the strongest defensive tackles ever, was knifing us. I mean, we were on the sidelines having game plans within the game plan of how we were going to block back and keep him from penetrating the backside. And the guard pulls on this one, third and inches to basically ice the game and win it. The guard pulls. I'm so worried about blocking back on this that I short the snap. It drops straight down. I could feel it. I can almost like feel it around my ankles. I just start grinding, and me and Olsen are like almost working against each other, and we're barely containing this beast. And luckily, Jonathan Stewart ran and he dove on it and ended up being fourth down. We had to punt it. But I remember coming off, And Rivera wouldn't even look at me. The coordinator wouldn't look at me. Like there was kind of this weird shaming thing that was happening coming off the field. Now, luckily, they punted it back at their own 10, and Luke Kuechly like went off and had like 3 amazing plays and took him out and got the ball back for us. And I remember like hugging him after the game because it was just such a depressing thing to know that might have been the game ender. You mentioned a bunch of quarterbacks. One name I didn't hear you mention was Tim Tebow.
Not a quarterback.
I'm curious. What's that?
Not a quarterback. He was a personal punt protector.
What was it like playing with Tim?
Oh, Timmy. It was interesting. I think the machine of Tim Tebow is impressive.
What do you mean? What does that mean?
Everything that goes into what makes Tim Tim, and I think just the idea where he, everything's kind of mapped out and everything's planned and there's no surprises, there's no anything like that. It was a terrible decision, I think, on our part for bringing him in. I don't think we needed that. I think Rex and Tannenbaum got all excited about, the possibilities. In training camp up in Cortland, we're doing like secret Tebow meetings, because we weren't going to do it on the field, so we could figure out this Wildcat. Like, well, the Wildcat's been pretty much figured out by now, so I think we're wasting our time on this. And we never really used it, and so
hold on, what do you mean secret Tebow meetings?
We would have, instead of doing like walkthrough on the field, we'd be doing it in like a classroom.
Oh, I see. So in case your opponent was spying on you.
I mean, we're talking training camp, so it wasn't even an opponent. It was just like in case someone saw that we were working on these plays, like they were the best thing ever. We're like, well, this is stupid because these plays aren't going to work anyways. So it was just overall, it was not good.
Do you think that goes down a lot, spying on other teams? I've always wondered that because in Charlotte, our practice facility was surrounded by 1 million high rises. I always would sometimes daydream that some opponent we were playing was up there renting a top floor and just you could film our whole practice and know everything.
Yeah. Where our practice facility out here in Jersey, you really don't have that, but they did have. There was one time there was people. It was after the leaves started falling, and so because we got pretty good foliage around the facility and everything, and there's not really tall buildings around or anything, but there is an office building off to one side, so the leaves are starting to fall off the trees, and there were they were just Jets fans, so it wasn't. I don't think there was any spying, but there were 3 cars of people just watching practice through the trees, and security goes over and kicks them out and everything. But yeah, I don't know. I would assume that people are trying to get the best effort they can to try to get every little edge, but unless you have a situation like you guys have with high rises around, I think it would be very apparent if there was somebody watching a Jets practice, because there's no other buildings around. But if you had high rises, I mean, if I was a team there, I'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll watch it. But it can only help you so much, you can watch the plays, which are the same plays that everyone else is running. So unless you know what play is coming, I don't know if it's going to help you as much, but it would be interesting to see if there's anyone doing those type things.
What about Brett Favre? That's another mysterious player to me that I'm always curious about what the Brett Favre experience was like.
It was, obviously it didn't work out well in the end, but it was awesome for me because I grew up watching Brett Favre. Brett Favre was NFL football, and so to be able to snap to this legend was fantastic. We had a good run going. I think at one point we're 8-2, something like that. We were really rolling, and then the wheels kind of fell off the cart a little bit there, which was disappointing. And people try to make up the whole idea oh, he wasn't really a team guy. He wasn't in the locker room, wasn't doing those things. And when you think back on it now, I was 24 at the time, and I think he was 40 at that point. So it was a 16-year difference, something like that. And I got to tell you, as I'm getting very close to 40, I'm probably not hanging out with any 24-year-olds. So I get it. I wouldn't be hanging out with me then either. So I think it was more of an age thing than it was like, hey, listen, I'm better than these people. I don't need to be in the locker room. Like I didn't expect Breck to be like, hey, we're going out to TGI Fridays. You want to come grab some, 2-for-1 appetizers. That's just not his gig. Like, and now being older, I definitely understand that more.
It's funny how also too at that time that like something like the idea, because I heard this about him in Minnesota that he had all these days off and he really only practiced a couple times a week, and that was a recipe for disaster. And then it's like you hear reports of Tom Brady taking days off now, and everybody's like, yeah, that makes sense. He should. He's earned it. He's deserved it. It's weird how we change our minds on those things in such a short period of time.
The one with Tom that gets me though is like you disappear for 9 days at a training camp, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, he had some business to take care of. Like that, like, yeah, like 9 days just up and disappear. I mean, I remember I went to London for the My sister was in the Olympics, 2012.
What event was she in?
Powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting. And so I called the owner and I was like, hey, listen, this is kind of, I would like to do this to be there for my sister and everything. It's like, yeah, of course, like family. And it was like 2 days. So like we took the red eye out to London, saw her compete and flew back. And so like I missed, I think 2 or 3 days of training camp. But I remember like just those 2 or 3 days missing it for like a real reason. Not that Tom doesn't have a real reason, but putting it out there, this is my reason I want to go. Is that possible? I remember that being a very stressful moment. So to have like Tom just be like, oh yeah, I'm gone for 9 days. And everyone's just like, all right, no big deal. We'll see you when you get back. Like, what?
So crazy. I missed the birth of my second child for a preseason game against the Jets, actually, because Rivera's first year. So I was like, it's almost like you're sort of like on a first date. Like I was trying to, do right. My contract was up. I was hoping to stay in Carolina. And I remember asking Rivera, hey, coach, I think my wife's going to give birth tomorrow. I was like, what do you think I should do? And I thought he was going to say, yeah, of course, get out of here. It's a preseason game. Like, go before the birth. But instead, he looked at me with a deadpan and he goes, you do whatever you think's right. And he just sort of tapped me on the back and left. And I was like, oh, my gosh.
It's the worst.
One question I get asked a lot, and I'm curious to hear your answer, is who is the hardest guy you ever had to block?
Oh, that, of course, is Vince Wilfork.
It's a big man.
That's a big man. Vince was one of the ones, being in the same division, we see each other twice a year. So I think Vince and I ended up going against, and then he goes to Houston, and we ended up playing Houston that next year as well. So I think Vince and I played against each other between playoff games and regular season 23, 24 times.
Crazy.
And so then after a while, like you get past the physical side of it, which, he's a big man and everything.
That's giving me anxiety. I think I only played him once or twice. That's giving me anxiety thinking about how many times you had to play him like that. Hey, will you do me a favor for the layman? Will you explain to not only how hard of a player he is to block just in and of itself, but the defensive scheme he played in as a head up nose guard, right directly zero shade over the top of you versus a shade player. Can you just talk about, as a center, how much harder that is to block a guy like that versus a guy who's shaded?
Yeah. So Vince was in his own enigma of, he's a massive human. You can look at Vince and you can say like, oh, he's going to be a tough guy to block because he's so big. And, but he was also crazy athletic. And I think that kind of got lost on people a lot of times when you see him. There was a rumor going around that he could still dunk a basketball. Even at the size that he was, which I did not believe until I ran into a coach of his further on in my career. I was like, I got to ask you, like, is that true? And he's like, yeah. And the coach was like, I wouldn't believe it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. He's like, I saw him dunk a basketball. I was like, all right, I believe it. And so that's what made Vince really difficult. Because as a head up nose, a lot of times playing in a true 3-4 defense, he's just going to sit there. He's anchoring down. He's not going to move. He's holding up. He wants to take up 2 blockers, let the linebackers flow and cause havoc. And so that was tricky enough. But then, as Belichick does and evolves and everything, I mean, he moves him around a little bit. And now all of a sudden, now you got him as a shade where he's able to tee off a little bit. And now you're dealing with his, all 340 listed 330 pounds, really 360 pounds coming at you, with his hair on fire. And so you didn't know what you were going to get. And I think that's what made it even more difficult. Like, I think it was Ted Washington with Cleveland when I think my rookie year. He was the prototypical 3-4 nose tackle that did not move. Like, he just sat there. And so it really wasn't that bad because you're like, all right, I know where he's going to be. He's not moving anywhere. It's just whether or not I can get the angle on him. Where Vince, like, if he wanted to, he could do that, but he could also he could also be a little shifty and a little athletic. So after a while of playing against each other for so many times, and we're now getting into like the second level of the chess match. Like, all right, I know what you're going to do to me, and you know what you're going to do to me, but now I'm going to try to counter this, and we'll see if you know when I counter that, and like you get into all these mind games and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since retiring, I've been able to keep in touch with Vince, and it's been pretty cool because there's such a great respect level from the way that the two of us went after each other, that we've been able to do some things after football.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about, and the most important thing, and the thing I know you don't ever get asked, is about the Jets, the state of the Jets. I got to experience the Jets for that one cup of coffee year that I had, the semi-retirement. You mentioned a couple guys and it didn't work out. I'm in that category now. The only person I feel like I let down was you, to be quite frank. Nobody else, because I was not given the deal that I was promised in terms of practice and rest and all that. But that's for a different interview. But I'm curious what your experience was like in New York, where you felt like the sort of things the organization does well, the things that you felt like, gosh, if we could just do this. And then obviously looking at it from the outside, if any of that's changed, and if so, what?
I think when I first got there, we had this consistency where we had the same GM. And then, we had Mangini and then Rex, and we had Rex for a while. And then we went to Todd Bowles. And then there was this turmoil of once Tannenbaum was gone, and now we have multiple GMs coming through and multiple head coaches, you kind of lost a sense of direction because every coach comes in with their new mantra, with their new, all right, I want to do it this way. This is our new motto. This is, I want all of the meeting rooms to be green instead of white. Like, they change things around. And so when you're having that constant turnover, it affects the whole organization, and you can't find that consistency. Where now, I think where we're at with Joe Douglas at the helm, and I think Woody and Christopher have been backing him very well. And Joe is an offensive line minded fella, which I love. Seeing him drive his, I walk my kids to school every day, and so I see Joe drive by probably every other day. Like, it just times up nicely, and he's got his pickup truck and he's going to work, and like that's kind of what you want to see at your GM, not the flashy or anything. I feel like they're starting to get this identity and culture of the team. What I believe is that we're getting to the point where we're marrying up not only the front office and what we're trying to do there, but the football side of it, and the football side of it being consistent. Just like the players on the team. If you keep turning over an offensive line, be like, all right, listen, we're gonna plug in a new left tackle every 2 years and we're gonna be fine. You're not gonna be fine. Like, you need to find consistency. You need to find guys that can do this for a long time. I think the same goes for a front office, the GMs. You need to have that consistency, and I think we're starting to get there.
It's funny. I really like Joe Douglas a lot. I've got to spend a lot of time with him when I was there and talking about what his philosophy is. And I think he has a great plan for the Jets. I'm just curious, and you would probably know better than me because you know the owners way better than I do, what their temperature is on allowing him to take some chances, to make mistakes, and really create a long-standing organization rather than, it doesn't work in 3-4 years and let's shut it down and start again.
Yeah, I think they've. I'd like to believe. I mean, I've never had the in-depth conversation with them, but I'd like to believe that they've kind of realized that turnover isn't great. I think for me personally, so far, I don't think I've seen Joe have a major mistake yet, and I could be wrong. It could be my green-colored glasses, but so far it's been a steady build, and it's been a slow build, and I think that is a good thing. We, especially in this market, and you felt it for a year, in the New York City market, I mean, they're pushing for instantaneous gratification that no team can ever provide. And so instead of trying to appease the masses there, like, hey, listen, let's do this methodical. Let's go about it the right way. He's been trying to build up the offensive line as best as possible, which I think is a great route for any team to go. So you build up that offensive line, you get a quarterback, you have a strong defense, and you can do some things. And so it seems like that's what they're doing. They went young on defense. They have a lot of young, scrappy guys who are getting great experience right now. You're looking at. I'm a big fan of Sauce Gardner. Their first draft pick right now is for the corner. He's doing a great job. So he's starting to hit on things, and I think that hopefully shows the ownership like, all right, we're doing the right process. This is the way it's supposed to go. Let's continue with it.
Well, I'm rooting for you guys. I'm rooting for you. We need some new champions. We can't keep having Joe Namath come back and talk to the team every year. We need to mix it up in there. I love Joe.
Joe's always fun.
I love Joe. Joe's the best. Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much. Appreciate all you've done for me, all you've done for the game, and congrats again on the Ring of Honor. Well deserved, my friend.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me on. It was nice catching up a little bit.
You too, bud. Well, that's all we got for today. An enormous thank you to JuJu and Nick Mangold. And thanks to you guys for listening and tuning in. If you want to help spread the word about the show, I think there's a lot of football fans that would dig these kind of combos. Please do. Next week, I got one of my all-time favorite teammates on the show. I know I say that a lot, but Luke Kuechly is up, and he's easily top 2 on that list. I'm super excited to catch up with Luke. We've certainly got a lot to talk about. Final reminder, Eagles at Texans this Thursday night only on Amazon Prime Video. Well, I think that about covers it. Talk to you next week. This has been an Audible original production of Block Forever, produced by Fresh Produce and Audiorama. Matt Waxman is our lead producer. Sound design and edit by Kenny Holmes. Our producers are Kenny Holmes and Matt Schrader. Production assistant Ben Gerstel. And our talent booker is Kristen Dunn. For Audible, executive producer Pat Shaw. For Audiorama, the executive producer, well, that's me, Ryan Khalil. For Fresh Produce Media, executive producers Colin Moore, Joe Killian, and Jason Ross. Head of production, Elena Bovitz. Our supervising producer is Jamila Zara Williams. Production coordinator, Henry Koch. And our production manager is Herminio Ochoa. Special thanks to Powerhouse Capital and Mikey Fowler. And I'm your host, Ryan Khalil. Copyright 2022 by Audiorama Inc. Sound recording copyright 2022 by Audible Originals LLC.